This is Rob Tebbutt for ID Boxing. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Frank Smith. We're here in Saudi Arabia. It's the morning or the afternoon after the night before. Anthony Joshua versus Oleksandr Usyk 2. Of course, won by split decision by Oleksandr Usyk. Now that's all out of the way. How you doing, Frank?
I'm all right, a bit tired. It's the afternoon after the morning before, or something like that. It's the afternoon after the morning. Didn't finish until about 4 or 5 a.m., did we?
It was a late one. It always is a late one. I think we got turfed out of the media room at about 5:30. We got the coach back, and then we were working till about 9 o'clock. So, yeah, I felt fresher, but we moved, don't we, Frank? So anyway, I don't want to keep you away from your darling other half because it's quite scary. I don't really want her to fill me in. So let's get down to business. Oleksandr Usyk retains the unified heavyweight titles last night with a split decision win over Anthony Joshua. What are your thoughts on the fight?
I thought it was an entertaining fight. I thought it was a great fight. I thought Anthony Joshua performed much better than he did in the first fight. I thought Oleksandr Usyk was brilliant, as we know. You know, pound for he's arguably pound for pound 1-2 in the world. You got to say with what he's done in his boxing career. You know, I thought it was close in the first sort of 6-7 rounds. We saw a big 9th round from AJ where he unloaded and nearly, thought it was nearly over then at that point, and then a great 10, 11, 12 from Oleksandr Usyk, as expected. But it's it could have gone anyway, and everyone will have their opinion on what AJ should have done here, or etc. But that's boxing, and he'll be back stronger. And Oleksandr Usyk, like I say, he is up there 1-2 in the world, pound for pound in this sport right now. And I'm sure he'll be focusing on that Tyson Fury fight, who's surprisingly come out of retirement overnight.
Yeah, a big surprise. I don't think anyone was expecting that. We saw Anthony Joshua very, very emotional in the ring after. What were your thoughts on his, I don't know what you would call it, a passionate speech, a rant, whatever you want to call it? What were your thoughts on his words after the fight?
I think it's always difficult straight after the fight, when a fighter goes straight on the mic. He's been in there for 36 minutes of boxing, given literally everything he's got. They were both knackered as well, both absolutely knackered. AJ's a very respectful guy, and after that, I think what we saw in the press conference was how he really felt. That moment right there, straight after the fight, it was immediate. He'd literally just finished, and I think what we saw in the press conference was how he truly felt. And there was, there's a lot. The one thing about that Anthony is he's had pressure on him for years and years and years, of his career from everywhere, and a lot of people haven't supported him and haven't got behind him, especially in the UK. And even the reaction, the social media, I just think it's full of absolute morons. And, I think we have to support people who do what they do, not just in boxing, not just him, but other walks of life, whether it's football, whether it's this, that, the other. And I don't think he necessarily gets that support. And I think it's a lot of pressure on him. And ultimately, what he came out with at the press conference was how he felt. And, we saw it very upset. He wanted to win that fight. He gave it his all. He didn't win, but, he wanted to win. That was his focus. And you can imagine if you work for something for years and years and years and you don't get the win, ultimately it's like anything, we'd be frustrated.
That criticism, what you've just mentioned there, why do you think that is? Why do you think he gets that?
I don't know. I honestly think the British public, a lot of it is they don't like success, is the truth. And I also think people have got a voice on social media now who don't deserve to have a voice, in terms of everyone has their right to their opinion. But I think a lot of people on social media are arseholes, right, in truth. And we all see it. People call me a spotty, fat twat. Fair enough, if that's what you think of me. Don't know me, but it's fair enough. But I think he, what he's done for the sport of boxing over the years, not just in the UK, but globally, he deserves so much more praise. And, he's, all of us, you, boxing wouldn't be where it is, like I say, especially in the UK, without Anthony Joshua. And fighters, a lot of them wouldn't be in the position they are without Anthony Joshua, because of the investment that broadcasters put into the sport. Because he's really carried the sport in terms of huge numbers over the years, and I think put it in the position it is.
What did you make of the scorecard? Split decision. I think the general consensus was it was a fairly clear but competitive fight, but a clear win for Oleksandr Usyk. Glenn Feldman's card of 115-113 coming under a lot of scrutiny. What did you think about that card in particular?
Look, I think I had it a couple of rounds to Usyk, that fight, and I think he deserved to win the fight. You know, it's always difficult. Glenn Feldman's a brilliant judge. You know, and that's why he was picked, not picked, but both sides accepted him, because he's a very experienced judge, been involved in some of the biggest fights we've seen in recent times. It's like I always look at Twitter during the fight at how people are scoring it. Some people after 6 rounds had Usyk 5-0 up. Some people had it even. You know, like, so the truth is, it's subjective, isn't it? It's everyone's opinion, and people see different things. And I'm not a judge. I don't ever sit there and really judge a fight. I think, like I say, Usyk won by a couple of rounds, and I think he deserved to win the fight. It was a competitive fight, and there was moments they both had. Great periods of the fight, but ultimately it's always going to be subjective. It's not like football where you score a goal and it's 1-0. And I'm sure he'll have his reasons for why he scored the fight that way. And I'm sure they'll follow, the sanctioning bodies. I'm sure that they always, follow due process, and we'll look into that. But everyone has a reason why they score the fight that way.
We've seen Anthony Joshua sign some big long-term deals, of course, with Matchroom Boxing before the first fight. Recently with DAZN, becoming a partner, a shareholder, an advisor, I think is one of the other kind of parts of that deal. He has lost 3 of his last 5 fights now, including 2 back-to-back, admittedly against a pound-for-pound star in Oleksandr Usyk. How much does that affect his marketability?
Look, I think, he obviously avenged the first defeat against Andy Ruiz, and then has lost, like you say, against pound-for-pound number 1, 2 in the world in Oleksandr Usyk, which is, there should be no shame in that, because most people wouldn't have even taken on the challenge. They would have vacated the belt and got out of there, like a lot of people expected him to do. Whereas he took the challenge and then went straight back in there for a rematch that a lot of people didn't think he would do. I think when you talk about marketability and his commercial position, I still truly believe, and I'm sure there'll be people out there go, no, you're absolutely mad, Anthony Joshua in the UK is the biggest star in boxing. And in the world, he's still up there with the biggest stars in boxing, with the likes of Canelo. Anthony Joshua against Deontay Wilder, in my opinion, does bigger numbers than Oleksandr Usyk against Tyson Fury. I think. I'm sure there'll be people who disagree. And there's a lot of fights out there for him still. There's a lot of fights out there that make sense for Anthony Joshua. And he is still a huge commercial star, no doubt.
Those fights, what fights would you like to see for him next? Is it a rebuilding phase? Does he want to go into a big fight? Obviously, it's going to be a little while before he boxes for a heavyweight title. Certainly 1 or 2 fights at least. What next for him?
Ultimately, we'll be led by him and his team. He likes challenges, but I think the key is now, as well, is like Eddie said in the press conference, he's staying active. He wants to get back out in December. What's that? 4 months away. We got to keep him active, because he's had. With these big fights, they take time. Everyone thinks it's easy. They take time to get them over the line. The contracts take a period of time. Hence why he hasn't fought as much as we would have liked him to. But it's not down to him. That's just the sheer scale of the events that we're putting on, that he's involved in. So we'll be led by him. But like I say, there's massive fights out there. Even the Dillian Whyte rematch, massive fight as well. Someone said to me earlier he should fight Jarrell Miller, but I'm not sure about Jarrell Miller personally. But there's so many fights out there for him, and he has still got a huge position in the sport, and he's got a lot more to offer. And I still believe he becomes 3-time heavyweight champion of the world.
You mentioned Deontay Wilder there. I think everybody would love to see that fight. We of course missed the boat a couple of years ago when there was a lot of talk around it. How detrimental is the relationship between PBC, Matchroom, Eddie, Shelley Finkel, Al Heyman, that whole kind of blend in preventing that fight from happening?
Look, we have dealings with PBC. We talk to them quite a lot. Obviously been talking about Leo Santa Cruz against Leigh Wood. Been talking about Akhmadaliev against Stephen Fulton as well, amongst other fights. And you hope that ultimately an opportunity for the fighters, the individuals, means more than just personalities who don't necessarily see eye to eye. Because it's not about any of us, really. It's not about anyone. Like, if we can get deals, we work with everyone. We work with Top Rank. We work with, you had Ben Whittaker on the card last night as well. We work with all of them. Golden Boy recently, So we have no problem working with other promoters. And you just hope, like I say, that all of that, if there is issue between people, stays out of the way, because ultimately it's the fighters that are most important. If the fighters want to fight and the fighters have an opportunity to make money, that's what's most important.
Saw Zhang on the undercard last night. Narrow loss to Filip Hrgović. A lot of people felt that he may have done enough to nick that. Of course, scored the early knockdown. Seen Derek Chisora down there. He said he's been testing the waters about him going over there. Derek, I think, would be an interesting sort of person to go over to China for that fight. Is that a potential fight for Anthony Joshua, or is it something that we could potentially see Derek in?
Yeah, possibly. Do you know what? I was running about during that fight, so I didn't see it all. But a lot of people said that Gilles. Yeah, I saw some some bits of it. It was entertaining back and forth. I saw probably 4 or 5 minutes of the whole fight. But I think a lot of people didn't give Gilles a chance in that. They thought from the run Hrgović has been on, and what everyone talks about with Filip Hrgović, that it was going to be a easy night's work for him, really. Or if it went past 4 or 5 rounds, that Filip would be able to get him out there. Gilles looks in great shape. He trained very hard for that, and he's still got maybe the Chisora fight's there, like you say. Could it be Anthony Joshua? Possibly. So let's see how it plays out.
Final one from me. I do appreciate your time today. Tyson Fury had some pretty scathing comments towards both Anthony Joshua and Oleksandr Usyk last night. I know I've spoken to Eddie about it. Eddie, I think it's fair to say, wasn't best pleased with Tyson Fury's comments. Just your thoughts on those?
I think he's an absolute moron, but a lot of people think he's a moron. He changes his position every 4 or 5 hours, doesn't he? I think he came across like a bit of an idiot in his video last night, but that's him, isn't it? Last week he retired. Now he's back again. So now he's going to beat everyone easy. So I think the more time people spend talking about it, the more it sort of inflates everything around it. So I just think leave him to it. Let him play his games. Tomorrow he'll change his mind and say something else. So let's wait and see what he says then.
Leigh Wood versus Leo Santa Cruz, September the 24th?
Not that one, but another big one we're looking at.
Okay, Frank Smith, always a pleasure. Thanks very much for speaking to ID Boxing. Thanks very much for having us out here in sunny Saudi Arabia. Look forward to catching up with you soon.
Cheers, mate. Good to see you.